Hey, what are you doing sitting here?
I'm waiting for my daughter. She's inside the dance studio.
You look drunk. Be honest.
I just finished a 24-hour fire shift. I don't drink.
Where's your ID?
In my car. I'm not doing anything wrong.
The man sitting on the curb barely noticed the cold March wind biting through his jacket. His body ached from a long day, every muscle screaming for rest. All he wanted was 10 minutes of peace before picking up his daughter from dance class. But the sudden flash of red and blue lights across the street made his chest tighten. A police car had pulled up, engine idling, and a young officer stepped out, his gaze locked on the man like he'd seen a criminal. The man kept his hands visible on his knees, his eyes calm but wary. "I'm just waiting for my daughter," he said evenly, though his voice carried the fatigue of a double shift at the fire station. The officer's expression didn't soften. "Which building? What are you doing here?" "I told you. I'm picking up my daughter. She's inside the dance studio. Class ends in 10 minutes. The officer frowned, leaning closer, eyes narrowing. "You've been drinking?" "No. I've been working all day. I'm tired, that's all. I'm a firefighter." "ID," the officer demanded. "My wallet's in the car," the man replied. He pointed to his sedan parked next to the curb. The tension was instant. The officer didn't take a step back. He was young, straight out of the academy, and he carried a confidence that bordered on arrogance. He didn't see a father, a firefighter, a member of the community. He saw only suspicious behavior and a chance to assert authority. Before we continue, I have to ask, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. It had been a long 12 years since this man first joined the fire department. 12 years of running into burning buildings while others ran out, of performing CPR, of rescuing people trapped in overturned cars. He had earned recognition for bravery more than once, and his colleagues trusted him implicitly. But none of that mattered to this young officer standing in front of him, ready to question his presence on a public curb. The officer circled the car, glancing inside with suspicion. Nothing illegal. Nothing out of place. The man's badge and ID sat in the glove compartment. His firefighter sweatshirt identified him clearly, but still, the officer pressed forward. "Why are you really here?" "I just told you. My daughter's class is in that building. I'm waiting for her." The officer keyed his radio. "Dispatch, I need backup at the corner of Elm Street and Maple. Male subject, possible intoxication, suspicious behavior." The man's jaw tightened. He could feel the tension building in the street. People passing by glanced at the scene, eyebrows raised, but no one intervened. This was routine for the officer, seeing a black man in public and interpreting normal behavior as suspicious. Then a parent emerged from the dance studio, a woman with her own child in hand. She walked over, noticing the police car and the officer standing over a man on the curb. "Is everything okay?" she asked. "I'm fine," the man said softly. "This officer seems concerned that I'm sitting here." The woman's eyes widened. "Concerned? He's picking up his daughter, like he does every week. There's nothing wrong." The officer shifted uneasily, but didn't step back. "Ma'am, this is police business." "This is police business?" He's a father picking up his child. Within minutes, another patrol car arrived. The new officer, a seasoned veteran who had worked with the young officer before, immediately recognized the issue. She took in the scene. A man seated calmly on a curb, a small car next to him, a dance studio behind them. No signs of intoxication, no visible danger, nothing unusual. "Hey, what's going on?" she asked, approaching the young officer. "He's sitting on the curb. Claims he's waiting." The dance studio door opened, and little Emma ran out, stopping short when she saw the police cars. Her eyes filled with fear. "Daddy?" Aaron knelt down quickly. "I'm okay, baby. Nothing happened." The veteran officer knelt beside Emma, reassuring her. Your dad's fine, honey. Everything's okay. Let's go home. The young officer's radio crackled again, and he froze. He had called backup for no reason, harassed a father, and now had a small child terrified in front of him. Moments later, a lieutenant arrived on the scene. He was a man with decades of experience who had reviewed the young officer's previous complaint records. He took in the situation, listened to both officers, spoke with the parent and the dance studio staff, and finally turned to the young officer. Radio and badge. Administrative leave pending investigation. The young officer paled. I was just checking. You harassed a firefighter for sitting on a curb. You accused him of intoxication without evidence. You scared a child. This is your third complaint in 2 years, all showing the same bias. You are done until further investigation. Aaron collected his daughter and walked to his car. He looked back at the scene, at the officers, at the flashing lights, and a sense of exhaustion mixed with anger washed over him. I save lives for a living, he muttered. And this is how they treat me for sitting outside and waiting for my daughter. By that evening, the fire department stood publicly behind Aaron. The story hit local news. Firefighter questioned while waiting for daughter at dance class. Third complaint against officer raises questions about bias and training. Legal counsel was contacted immediately. Within weeks, a formal complaint and lawsuit were filed, alleging racial profiling, harassment, and violation of civil rights. Evidence was clear. The officer had no legal basis for the stop. Witnesses confirmed Aaron's routine presence. The city eventually settled for $1,500,000, reflecting the trauma inflicted on Aaron and his daughter. The officer was terminated shortly after the settlement, his law enforcement career ending before it had truly begun. The department implemented new policies: mandatory bias training, supervisor review of stops involving suspicious behavior, and automatic investigation after 2 similar complaints within 3 years. Aaron's story was not just about one officer or one father. It became a wake-up call, a system-wide reflection on how patterns of bias could persist unchecked, how verbal counseling alone was insufficient, and how children could experience trauma for the simplest acts of parental care. The city was quiet that Monday morning, but Aaron's phone buzzed incessantly. Messages from colleagues, friends, and parents at the dance studio poured in. Everyone wanted to know if he and his daughter were okay. He hadn't even had time to process what had happened. The humiliation, the fear, the helplessness, it all settled in like a weight pressing down on his chest. He sat at the kitchen table, Emma coloring quietly beside him. Her small hands shook a little as she tried to focus on her drawings. "Daddy," she whispered, "are the police going to come back?" Aaron's heart ached. He had to keep his voice calm. "No, baby. They're not coming back. Everything's fine. You're safe." But he knew the truth. The system hadn't protected him or his daughter that Saturday. It hadn't stopped the officer from harassing him. The threat wasn't gone. It was only paused, waiting for the consequences to unfold. By mid-morning, his fire station captain called. "Aaron, we saw the news. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," he said tightly, trying to keep his anger in check. "Emma's scared, but she's okay now." "Listen," the captain continued, "we've already contacted legal. You have full support from the department. No one doubts your word. You've done nothing wrong." Aaron took a deep breath. He was used to emergencies, to chaos, but this felt different. This wasn't a fire he could run into and control. This was the law system, full of bureaucracy, bias, and uncertainty. He had to navigate it carefully. By afternoon, a lawyer from the firefighters' union arrived at his house. She was professional, calm, and immediately set to work. "Aaron, we're going to file a complaint and a lawsuit. This isn't just about you. It's about your daughter, about all the fathers and mothers who shouldn't have to explain their presence in public. It's about stopping officers who show clear bias patterns from continuing to patrol unsupervised. Aaron nodded. I don't want anyone else's kid to be scared the way Emma was. The lawyer looked him in the eye. That's exactly why we're going to make sure the city takes this seriously. Meanwhile, Officer Daniel Moore, the rookie responsible, was in a small interrogation room at the police station, his radio and badge now confiscated. He sat slouched in a chair, staring at the wall. His training officer tried to justify his actions in hushed tones. Look, he was just following procedure. He didn't know the full context. Give him a chance. The lieutenant who'd arrived that Saturday didn't look convinced. 3 complaints in 2 years, all the same type of bias stops. That's not chance. That's a pattern. Administrative leave isn't a punishment. It's a necessary pause while the investigation proceeds. This is serious. Daniel muttered, but I thought I was doing my job. Your job isn't to assume every black man sitting on a curb is a criminal, the lieutenant said firmly. Your job is to enforce the law without prejudice. You failed. And now, the city is paying for your mistakes. At the courthouse, the legal process began in earnest. Aaron's lawyer filed a complaint, citing racial profiling, harassment, and violation of civil rights. The city's legal team responded with a standard defense: procedural adherence, lack of intent, and questioning the credibility of witnesses. But the evidence was clear. Security camera footage from the dance studio showed Aaron sitting quietly on the curb. Parents testified he had been a regular presence, predictable and non-threatening. The officer's own complaint record, 3 incidents in 2 years, demonstrated a bias pattern the city could not ignore. During the first mediation session, Aaron's lawyer laid out the case. This officer targeted a man for no reason other than being black and in public. There's no lawful basis for the stop. He accused Mr. Lewis of intoxication without evidence, traumatized a child, and ignored witness testimony that confirmed his innocence. This is not an isolated incident. It's a repeated pattern. The city's legal representative shifted uncomfortably. We acknowledge the concerns. We are prepared to investigate, and... Aaron interrupted. Prepared to investigate? My daughter asked me that night if the police were going to take me away. She's 8 years old. How is investigation enough? We're talking about real fear, real trauma. This isn't paperwork. It's my life and my child's safety. The room went silent. Lawyers scribbled notes, officials whispered, but no one spoke directly to Aaron. He could see that his words were making an impact. He wasn't just representing himself. He was speaking for every father, every parent, every person unjustly targeted. Meanwhile, Officer Moore sat in another room, realizing the gravity of his actions. He'd never intended to scare anyone, he told himself. But intent didn't erase consequence. He was facing termination, the lawsuit, public scrutiny, and the knowledge that a child had watched her father be treated like a criminal. In a tense conversation with his training officer, Moore said quietly, I didn't know. I didn't think it was a big deal. I thought I was just doing my job. The training officer shook his head. You have to understand, Daniel, this isn't about procedure anymore. It's about bias. It's about seeing patterns and failing to correct them. You've had warnings. You've had complaints. And you did it again. You can't erase this with an apology. You can't erase a child's fear. Moore swallowed hard. I never wanted this to happen. Intent doesn't matter, the officer replied. The impact does, and the impact is real. The city will pay, and your career is likely over. Back at home, Aaron was trying to keep his life normal while legal proceedings moved forward. Emma returned to dance classes, but she was quieter, more cautious. Aaron noticed her hesitation as they walked to the car, her hand tightly clutching his. Every time they passed a police officer, her eyes flicked nervously toward the badge. He tried to reassure her, tried to normalize life, but he knew the memory of that day would stay with her longer than he wanted. His lawyer called midweek with updates. The city was considering a settlement. The figure was high, reflecting the trauma, the officer's repeated bias, and the likelihood of public exposure. Aaron was torn. Justice felt necessary, but he hated the idea that money could replace the trust lost, the fear inflicted on his child. "I just want to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else," he said. "I want training, oversight, accountability, not just a check in my account." His lawyer nodded. "That's exactly what we're aiming for. The settlement isn't just compensation, it's leverage to force change." By the second week, media attention grew. Local news stations ran footage of Aaron sitting quietly outside the dance studio, juxtaposed with images of Officer Moore approaching him aggressively. Headlines questioned departmental policies, rookie training, and accountability mechanisms. Parents and firefighters alike shared similar stories, reinforcing a systemic problem rather than an isolated incident. The city's internal review began to show cracks in standard procedures. Multiple officers had similar complaints dismissed with minimal consequence. Policies intended to correct bias were treated as optional. Aaron's case became a catalyst for change, a stark reminder that verbal counseling alone does not prevent repeated misconduct. The week closed with a tense court hearing. Aaron sat beside his lawyer, Emma at his feet, holding his hand. Officer Moore's attorney tried to argue that his client acted within reason, citing rookie training manuals, but Aaron's presence, the witnesses, and the evidence made the room feel suffocating for Moore. Each detail he had ignored, the uniform, the badge, the parent testimony, stacked against him like bricks. The judge, reviewing the documents and testimony, paused. It is clear that the officer acted without reasonable suspicion. The repeated pattern of complaints indicates a failure to correct known bias. Settlement discussions are encouraged to avoid prolonged litigation, but this office finds no fault in the plaintiff's claims. Aaron exhaled slowly, relief washing over him, tempered by the knowledge that Emma's fear could not be settled with money. Still, he had taken a stand, for himself, his daughter, and the system that needed accountability. The settlement talks were tense. Aaron sat in a small conference room, Emma perched on the edge of a chair beside him, clutching her ballot bag. Across the table, city attorneys shifted papers nervously, glancing at Officer Moore, who avoided eye contact. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation and unspoken tension. Aaron's lawyer leaned in, speaking clearly and deliberately. "The settlement we're seeking is not just compensation. It reflects the trauma inflicted on Mr. Lewis and his daughter, the repeated misconduct by Officer Moore, and the urgent need for policy changes within the department. We want accountability, not silence." A city attorney cleared his throat. "We understand the concerns and are willing to offer $1,500,000 to settle the claims. Additionally, we will conduct a full review of department policies regarding stops involving similar complaints and bias training for all officers." Aaron exhaled slowly, absorbing the figure. It was substantial, far more than the inconvenience or embarrassment of the incident. But this wasn't about money. It never was. He wanted justice, protection for others, and assurance that Emma's experience wouldn't repeat for another child. He turned slightly to look at Emma. Her eyes met his, filled with curiosity and cautious hope. "It's okay, baby. This is going to help make things right," he said quietly. Officer Moore was called in for a final disciplinary review. The lieutenant who had first responded to the Saturday incident sat across from him, expression unreadable. "Daniel," he began, "you've had 3 documented complaints in 2 years, all showing the same bias toward black men in ordinary public settings. You were counseled, trained, and given multiple opportunities to correct your behavior. And yet, you harassed a father for sitting outside a dance studio. Do you understand the severity?" Moore's voice was low, almost defeated. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I thought I was doing my duty." Intent is irrelevant here. You created a traumatic situation for a child. You misused your authority. You violated department policy and civil rights. This behavior is unacceptable. Your badge and radio are being permanently revoked. You are terminated, effective immediately. Moore's face drained of color. He had known the consequences were serious, but hearing them confirmed left him numb. There's nothing I can do. The lieutenant shook his head. No. The department has clear evidence of misconduct and bias patterns. Appeals will not overturn this. The settlement was finalized within weeks. Aaron's attorney confirmed the city would pay the $1,500,000, issue a public statement acknowledging the misconduct, and implement new department policies. Mandatory bias training before any officer is field certified, real-time supervisory review of stops involving alleged suspicious behavior, and automatic investigation after 2 complaints within 3 years. Aaron reflected on the events while sitting at the kitchen table one evening, Emma drawing quietly beside him. The money was a tangible acknowledgement, but what mattered more was the system had been forced to respond. The policies would prevent other children from witnessing a parent questioned without cause. The department could no longer ignore clear patterns of bias. Still, the memory of that evening lingered. He remembered the fear in Emma's eyes as she ran toward him from the dance studio, the tension in the street as he was questioned, the officer standing over him, radio in hand, seeing a father as suspicious rather than protective. He remembered the words he had muttered on the curb. I save lives for a living, and this is how they treat me. Those words would not leave him. They became his motivation. He began speaking publicly, sharing his story at city council meetings, community forums, and fire department events. His message was clear. Bias, unchecked, causes real harm. It traumatizes children, undermines trust, and disrespects those who serve their communities every day. The department's new policies started to take shape. Officers were now required to participate in quarterly bias and de-escalation workshops. Supervisors reviewed body camera footage more rigorously, especially in situations involving accusations of suspicious behavior. And any officer with 2 complaints in 3 years faced automatic review, a policy aimed at preventing another Daniel Moore from quietly repeating the same mistakes. For Aaron, the changes were a victory, but they were also a reminder of how long systems take to respond when patterns of bias are obvious. He knew this wasn't the last case, and it wouldn't be the last child or father affected by a similar situation. But now, he had leverage, evidence, and the public's attention. Months later, at a community safety forum, Aaron spoke to a room of parents, law enforcement officers, and local leaders. He recounted the incident with precision, carefully omitting details that could compromise privacy but emphasizing the trauma inflicted. You don't have to be doing anything wrong to be targeted, he said. Just existing in public shouldn't make you suspicious. Fathers should not have to explain why they are picking up their kids. Children should not have to fear authority figures for the simplest acts of care. And officers with repeated bias complaints should face real consequences immediately. Not verbal counseling, not optional training, real accountability. The room was silent for a moment, then erupted into applause. Some officers nodded quietly, acknowledging that change was overdue. Parents whispered to each other, relieved to see someone speaking on behalf of those too young or vulnerable to voice their own experiences. Aaron felt a mixture of pride and sorrow. Pride that he had fought back. Sorrow for the fear his daughter had experienced. But most of all, determination. He couldn't undo what had happened, but he could help prevent it from happening again. At home, Aaron watched Emma practice her ballot routine. She moved carefully, eyes focused, but a little more confident than before. He smiled softly, realizing that healing would take time. Money, policy changes, public recognition, they didn't erase fear, but they were steps forward. Steps toward a world where sitting on a curb to wait for a child wasn't a crime. where bias patterns were corrected before damage occurred, and where law enforcement could protect rather than intimidate. He knew this story would resonate beyond his neighborhood, beyond the courthouse. It was a reminder that accountability matters, that training matters, and that one parent's fight could spark change for countless others. The city learned a costly lesson. Officer Moore's career ended after just 2 years. The $1,500,000 settlement was a warning that misconduct has real consequences. Policies were updated to prevent similar incidents. And for Aaron and Emma, life gradually returned to normal. Though the memory of that night remained vivid, a permanent reminder of why vigilance, advocacy, and accountability are essential. Aaron often reflected on that day, on the street, on the curb, on the flashing lights. He thought of his daughter's frightened face, the small grip of her hand in his. And he vowed that no one else should have to experience that fear, that helplessness, for simply being in public. Because change isn't automatic. It's deliberate. It's driven by people who refuse to accept injustice, who speak up, and who demand better. And sometimes it begins with a single father sitting on a curb, fighting, not just for himself, but for every child who deserves to see their parents safe, respected, and free from harassment.